pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, be with us tonight as we do the business for the city, for the good and the welfare of the people. In Jesus' name, amen.
This is item C, approval of agenda. This is approved agenda for April 10th, being today, 2023 regular planning commission meeting.
I move to approve the agenda for April 10th, 2023.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Very good. This is item D, citizens' comments. At this point, we would allow citizens to comment on any agenda item they feel fit to comment on, and we would allow them 3 minutes. Each guest is welcome to comment. They must state their first and last name and where they reside. If this is for the rezoning, there will be an open public hearing for the rezoning. So if you do have any comments about the rezoning, you will get your chance to speak at that time. If it's anything other than the rezoning, then you feel free to speak at this time.
It's open citizens' comments.
Very good. First and last name. Thank you.
I'm Denise Hike. My address is 2300 South Wheel Street. And I'd like to talk about the subject of duplexes that you discussed in last month's meeting. I wanted to hear what you had to say before I spoke about it. My understanding about these duplexes being built is the investors are all purchasing them and they're all being rented out. Is that correct? Please correct me if I'm wrong. And thank you for bringing up the fact that the 420 duplexes is 840 units. When they talk about the 60-40 being built behind my house, I consider that being 120 single family to 162 duplex units. So that ratio to me is 43% single family to 57% duplexes or rental if it is all rental. Also, what I hope you would consider when you're discussing the future of duplexes is how many apartments we're going to have when we are already approved are built when it's after it's all done. We are currently in need of a few more rental options, but I do feel the current duplexes and apartments being built is going to be more than enough to fulfill that need. And the comment last month about the older parts of town that have empty lots, I think Micah said he doesn't think a single family would like to build and live in the old town area. I would disagree with that comment. Both my kids love that area they are living in now. I think it would sell right away if you would build a single family on those vacant lots. And if your main goal is more tax base than what a single family would give, please consider building owner-occupied condos. There are a lot of people here that have owned properties most of their life, and when they downsize, they're not going to go back to renting, and they might be looking at condos. That would be a great option for more tax-based properties. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment at this time? Mr. Vice Chair, if you will, you can close citizens' comments.
Close the citizens' comments.
Very good. Item E, this is approval of minutes. This is approved the Planning Commission regular meeting minutes from March 13th of 2023. We had a discussion about duplexes and a discussion about non-conformity in Old Town.
I'll make a motion we approve the planning commission regular meeting minutes from March 13th, 2023.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. This is item F, Board of Zoning Appeals. This is item F.1, Ben Healy Land Rezoning, case number zone 23-1. So quick background, Baughman Company submitted an application on behalf of the developer Ben Healy to rezone a tract of land from R1 Single Family Residential C2 General Business District. The land is currently zoned R1 Single Family Residential and is around 9.45 acres. The developer would like to build commercial properties in the area. The land has a horse barn on it currently, and final consideration for the rezoning will be before the City Council. So you guys have seen this before, but we have to go through what's called golden rules. It's under Article 13 of the subdivision regulations. So the questions are in black and the answer by city staff and myself is in purple. So what are the existing uses and their character and condition of the subject property and in the surrounding neighborhood? The existing use for the land is farming ranch operation with improvements. I will say, I have to mention right here real quick, it's been said before, there was some confusion about what improvements mean. So I just want to say this is a zoning classification for county purposes. So when they say improvement, like with improvement, or in this case, for farm and ranch land, no improvement, improvement means that there's a building on it. Not that it doesn't or does improve the quality of life. Improvement simply means there's a building on it. So if it says that it's farming ranch land with an improvement, that means it's probably got a barn on it, or a house, or some other type of structure. If it says farming ranch land with no improvement, it just means it's raw agricultural, there's no buildings on it. So that question has come up before, I just want to make that clear. So existing use for the land is farming ranch land with improvements. To the north, the use is classified as road, ground, passenger transit, transportation. That is the one that's 454, owned by KDOT, Kansas Department of Transportation. To the east, the use is classified as farming ranch land with no improvements. To the south, the use is farming ranch land, no improvements. To the west, the use is single-family residence, detached, and road, ground, passenger transit, transportation. What is the current zoning of the subject property and that of the surrounding neighborhood in relation to the request? Current zoning for the subject property is R1 single-family residential. To the north is rural residential, RR, county classification. To the east is C2, general business district. To the south is planned unit development, PUD. To the west is rural residential. Is the length of time that the subject property has remained undeveloped vacant as a zoning factor in the consideration? No. Until recently, February 6, 2023, land was in the county and the city had no regulatory authority over its development or zoning. So this was originally a county land. We annexed it. When we annexed, it defaults to R1, so now he's going through a rezoning application. Would the request correct an error in the application of these regulations? So no. Every time you see 4, what they're asking is, hey, is there a use that was approved and it should actually have been zoned something prior to its approval? In this case, there's nothing because this is was a county land and now it's city land, so this is not a correction of the regulations. Is the request caused by change or change conditions in the area of the subject property, and if so, what is the land and significance of such change or change conditions? So the US 54 commercial corridor is beginning to fill in. Examples include Brahms, Camp Bowell, Starbucks, etc. So I think we're starting to see more commercial growth on US 54, and so this rezoning request to a general commercial district is probably to meet that demand. We're starting to see that as more residential grows in and around Goddard, the commercial growth is starting to trickle in to follow that residential growth, and that's why he wants to rezone it. Do adequate sewage disposal and water supply and all of the necessary public facilities, including street access, exist or can they be provided to serve uses that would be permitted in the subject property? So city sewer and city water are in close proximity, and 183rd is paved, and of course the developer can go through the petition process during plating to ask for improvements to be put through on special assessments. Would the subject property need to be platted or replatted or new dedication made for right-of-ways, easements, and access control or building setback lines? So the subject property would need to go through platting process prior to any permanent development moving forward. Developer has been made aware of this. Would a screening plan be necessary for existing or potential uses of the subject property? So yes, the property abuts a residential property on the southwest corner. Is suitable vacant land or buildings available or not available for development that currently has the same zoning as is requested? So C2 zoning has about 488 acres on the city limits. About 45% have an improved value greater than 0. So basically to answer that question, I'm simply saying, how much do we have that's C2, general business, and how much of that has a building on it or built improvement? And about 45%. So we're starting to see that C2 has been slow to actually be built up in the past, and now we're hoping that this is starting to fill in. But that's kind of what this statement is asking, is could he have bought different land or something of that nature? And basically we're saying that he's trying to rezone his existing land so that he can market it for future commercial growth. If the request is for business or industrial uses, are such uses needed to provide more services and employment opportunities? The request is for business, and a resulting business that could occupy that area could increase potential services to the area and jobs. And so that's typically we say for 10, it's a no if it's residential, but in this case it is business. He's asking to be a rezone for businesses, for business purposes, so there is a potential job market opportunity. 11, is the subject property suitable for the area uses in the current zoning to which has been restricted? So no, right now it is R1, and that does not allow for commercial in that zoning classification. 12, to what extent will the removal of restrictions, i.e. the approval of zoning request, detrimentally affect other properties in the neighborhood? It is possible that residential property in the county could be impacted by the commercial property. Typical requirements would be screening from commercial use. That is a determination by the county for property evaluation. So commercial, that's abutting residential. County has said in the past there is a potential for it to impact the valuation of the residential. That's typically why the county and Wichita and Goddard require screening to separate this commercial use from a residential use. there is a residential property in close proximity, so we would require screening of that prior to any permanent long-term commercial improvements. Would the request be consistent with the purpose of the zoning district classification, intent, and purpose of these regulations? So a general business district, C2, is defined as a district established to provide for retail businesses and for service establishments not generally in a central business district because of their need for space. The particular nature of this operation, their accessibility to the motoring public, off-street parking is required, and also screening in order to produce possible adverse environmental effects on adjacent residential properties. So that's as defined here. So as mentioned, specifically, this is asking for the difference between central business district and general commercial, and he wants to rezone it to general commercial so that you can accommodate larger footprints for commercial buildings that you typically wouldn't see in a central business district. And the city staff has determined that is in purpose with the district. Let's see here, 13. Yes, and in the purpose of these regulations. And as mentioned, the purpose of the regulation intended to serve the following purposes: to promote the public health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare. These are the general purposes of the zoning and subdivision regulations. As mentioned, it is to implement the goals, policies, and proposals of a comprehensive plan for zoning jurisdiction, which we will go into the future land use map for that area. And we do believe its proposed zoning follows the intents and purposes of these regulations. Is the request in conformance with the comprehensive plan and as a further enhanced implementation of the plan? So the future land use map for 2025 shows the land as being general business district, so it is in conformance with the 2025 future land use map, showing that this area would in the future potentially be a general business district. Page 17 of the comprehensive plan reads as follows: objectives: maintain efforts to attract businesses and industries which would utilize locally available raw materials and merchandise on a regional and national basis. Plan for continued growth of commerce and industry based on sound land development practices which are in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Encourage diversified retail merchandising of goods and services with approximately planned areas while protecting the vitality of the central core area. Foster an atmosphere in which business and industry may grow and prosper, thereby encouraging enterprises which will provide needed goods and services to the community or region and a livelihood for its citizens. Maintain an economic development strategy to guide promotional efforts and maximize the benefits of available resources. Continue to promote development and use of existing industrial park and influence functional and efficient commercial development along US 54 400 corridor. I would highlight that one as certainly in compliance with what we are looking at today. What is the nature and support or opposition to the request? So the city has not received any opposition to this particular request. Support comes in the form of continued commercial growth, which is assessed at 25%, assessed at 25%, further enhancing the city's tax base. So commercial is assessed at 25%, residential is assessed at 11.5%. So the city collects more property taxes off commercial developments and industrial developments than it does residential. As mentioned, I haven't received any emails or phone calls or anything of that nature saying that anybody was in opposition to it. But I will say that we do have the Kansas Department of Transportation here today. If you do have any questions, they also received a letter because they are abutting this property to the north. Is there any information or are there any recommendations as requests available from professional persons or persons with related expertise which would be helpful in its evaluation? So major corridors like US 54 are typically zoned for commercial due to high traffic, which could be perceived negatively in a residential neighborhood, but is one of the key desirable metrics for commercial development. So this is actually got a text message from one of my brothers today asking about why would commercial businesses want to see more traffic? You know, what is that? Why does that matter? And obviously it's because the potential for those people that are carpooling back and forth to patronize those businesses increases dramatically when you have a certain amount of cars. For example, you see Brahms has a 35-foot sign with a pink ice cream cone on it, and that is to try to attract as many cars to come off of 54 and go to that store. So the more cars, the higher the probability of more business going to those stores. And so that's why you typically see on a major corridor like US 54, all commercial businesses typically. And there's obviously, it could be mixed use and there's exceptions to that, but you're usually going to be driving on a major corridor like 54, you're going to see commercial businesses. By comparison, does the relative gain to the public health, safety, or general welfare outweigh the loss in property value to the hardship imposed upon the applicant by not approving the request? The city does not foresee any negative impacts as most of the surrounding areas of commercial use or proposed for commercial uses. So this is the property in question. Here's Murphy's, Walmart's down here. This is the Ben Healy Planned Unit Development. Here's US 54 over here. This is that one residential property owner over here. But as you can see, the majority of this is going to be commercial, and this is 54 extension over here with KDOT. And so the majority of this area over here is commercial. So we don't necessarily see a negative impact immediately affecting any of the property owners. As mentioned, if there was long-term commercial growth over here, at some point we might want to consider screening, even though there is already a tree row over here screening most of the property. Financially, it would be a small cost for publication. We have to publish it, allow 20 days to lapse prior to anybody coming before Planning Commission. And then we would have to take it to City Council, and then City Council has to approve it. And if City Council approves it, then we'd have to publish it again in the city newspaper and allow 30 days before it becomes official. Legally, it's approved as the form. It is recommended the Planning Commission approve the rezoning request case number Zone 23-1. At this point, Mr. Vice Chair, you can open the public hearing related to Zone 23-1 for consideration of rezone application to rezone a tract of land from R1 Single Family to C2 General Business District. Public is invited to offer comment regarding this matter. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Please state your name and address before beginning the comment, after which, when the Planning Commission is satisfied that everyone has had their chance to speak, Mr. Vice Chair, you're able to close the public hearing, and then we'll go into deliberation of just the Planning Commission. So this is a requirement that our attorneys are wanting us to incorporate every time to make sure that we fully vet the letter of the law for a public hearing. So, Mr. Vice Chair, at this point, you can open the public hearing.
We will open the public hearing for this item.
So anyone at this point, if you want to comment on the rezoning for this, anyone is welcome to. KDOT's first.
All good. My name is Mike Launch. I work with the Kansas Department of Transportation in Wichita.
If you want to show that the green is that.
Sure. All right. My point of ability. You really want my address? I live in Towanda, Kansas. You guys. Okay. My office is in Wichita. Anyways, 54 obviously. We got a project that's sometime in the future. Don't have any idea when it's going to be, the Northwest Bypass. And which right now we have controlled access through here, and we have controlled access through here. There's not going to be any access from here to our highway. Someday there'll be a frontage road built here that they can access. Actually, I think right through here, I think. Control access actually comes back a little past here, but we're allowing an access here in the meantime because we don't know when our project's going to be built, but we're going to allow access there. That's pretty much all I came to say. It's just that I want to make sure that they know that there's controlled access there and there won't be any access directed to the highway. Questions? This was the most fun I had all night. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Welcome. Anybody else at this time? No, all right. Mr. Vice Chair, at this time, you can close the public hearing.
We will close public hearing.
Very good. So once again, it is recommended the Planning Commission approve the rezoning request for case number Zone 23-1. And feel free to ask questions, comments.
Did you see the property on the north east there? Is that the house there? Is that already?
Northeast?
That's residential right there.
This is residential, yes. I believe they're working with KDOT. This is owned by, I think, a Voth LLC, but they're working with KDOT to be purchased. I think this is the one, actually, you want to talk about that one at all? I think there was one of them that burned. Was,
Yeah, that's the one burned.
was this the one that burned?
It is.
I think that's the one that burned.
So they're probably not going to rebuild, do anything with it.
I don't think so. Actually, if you remember, the gentleman who actually owned that property came in when we were rezoning this one and said he was in favor of the rezoning of the PUD for Ben Healy's because it made his look more desirable for KDOT. So there's that. KDOT's behind us, so but cat's out of the bag there. But anyway, that's generally speaking, and obviously everybody within 200 feet of city limits, but also 1,000 feet if they're in the county, will receive the letter. I haven't heard a thing, so
You haven't
besides
heard
KDOT.
anything from the other residents there in the southwest?
This one over here?
Yes.
No, but I believe the developer is in communication with them.
Oh, yeah?
Is the property owner here?
Yeah.
Do you want to, I mean, public hearing's closed at this point, but we sent out letters per what the title company provided us. So I don't know if maybe what we've seen in the past is that somebody will get a letter and they'll say, oh, I never received it. And typically it's because if the title company pulls their ownership and maybe they had listed their previous address, their letter goes to their previous address. So that's happened before, but we send out letters to everybody that's on the title company's ownership list. So we require the developer to go to a title company. They pay maybe $150, $200. Title company has a professional executor pull everybody within the required listing per state law. And we send out letters and notifications to everyone on that title company listing. So depending on what was the ownership listing for this property, that's where that letter went.
Can we ask them directly?
I mean, yeah, the citizens' comments were open at this point, but I mean, if you want to, you feel free. I mean, public hearing if you want to.
Well, I mean, the residence is right next to it, so I would like to, I would
At your leisure.
feel a little more comfortable knowing what your opinion of the,
The reason I said anything, I didn't receive a letter, but I received a letter the last time, in March or February. I did receive that, but I did not receive this. My comments, at this time, I don't have any objection.
okay, thank you.
Did he acquire this after the other land?
Yes. So first the developer acquired this land, and then later, at a later point, acquired this land. By the way, the developer is behind me. This is Ben Healy, developer for the application for the rezoning. So,
Gotcha.
if you do have any questions for him, ask him directly.
No, I think it's good. I have no objection. Mr. Park?
No comment.
Motion?
I gotta find it so I can read it.
You got it?
I'll make a motion that we approve the rezoning request, case number zone 23-1.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Any opposed? Very good. All right, motion passes. Item G, this is old business, there is none. Item H, this is new business. So this is item H.1. So this is a special use discussion for a temporary bar. So the developer, Ben Healy, once again behind me, would like to inquire if the Planning Commission would consider approving a special use application for a temporary bar for the year of 2023, potentially into the year 2024. The location of the bar would be at the land considered for the rezoning agenda item F1, which you guys just considered. Currently, there is an empty horse barn on that the developer would like to retrofit into a temporary bar for the year of 2023. Temporary uses are outlined in Article 6.101. A bar is not outlined in Article 6, so the developer is asking if they can be considered for a temporary use with a special use permit. So the developer right now is not going through the special use application process yet. He first wanted to come to you guys and see what you would think about this first. If you felt favorably about it, then he would go through the special use application process, and then you would formally see a special use application coming before you in May. And then after which, if you guys considered it or denied it or approved it, then it would go to City Council for them to consider this final for a special use application. The developer is asking for temporary use delineation such that the general provisions on Article 3, 100.b for new uses of old structures would not apply. New uses of old structures would require all the zoning and subdivision regulations to come to play. Special use permit needs to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and then approved by the City Council. Publication is also required, allowing 20 days to lapse prior to consideration by the Planning Commission. So as mentioned here, we would have to go through this, and so to avoid having him spend any money prior to doing a special use and all the requirements, he's just seeing what you guys feel about it first. City Attorney confirmed that a special use can be approved with a time limit such that if the Planning Commission and the City Council wanted to limit the time of the special use, it could be considered. The building under consideration would need to go through MABCD for conversion and modification to a bar to allow the occupancy to reflect it. So regardless of what Planning Commission and City Council feels about in favor or against or indifferent about a bar, you still have to go to MABCD and pay an architect to convert that building into a bar. The occupancy has to flip to allow for actually people to be inside there to use that area. You know, there's a different occupancy for a horse barn, and this is a different occupancy, so that occupancy we need to flip. So you have to still go through that process regardless. If Planning Commission is willing to accept the conversion of a barn to a bar, city staff will publish it in the city newspaper, requiring that public notice begin the special use application process. So if you're in favor of it, tomorrow I'll send a public notice to the city newspaper, and then we'll start that process. And then the developer is going to go to City Council later this month, possibly, to consider it. And then in May, you guys can see the formal special use application in May, and that process would begin then. Temporary uses are outlined in Article 6, and no such uses allowed for a bar. This is just a review for a limited period of time. This request is unique and would require a review period, which could be reviewed as a special use application. The building in question would need to go through MABCD for permitting and a review of occupancy. This is voiding all necessary requirements for use change of permanent structures under Article 3. Special use permits need to be approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council. So this is the bar location. As you remember, this is the area that you just considered for rezoning. Obviously, there's no way you can allow a bar in a residential district, and since he wanted to do long-term commercial use anyway, he wanted to know prior to the plating and development of this area for long-term future growth if he could consider a temporary use for a bar location here in the interim. And so that's kind of something that he wanted to know during this time period, if you can look at that. This is some of the renderings from Law Kingdom that the developer has provided. This area over here would have to have a paved, asphalt, or concrete approach. Then this would stay as a graveled road. Parking would be over here. This would be the bar area location, and then some outdoor area for seating, and food trucks would be over here in this general area. Financially, it's a small publication cost because if you do consider it today favorably, we would publish it in the city newspaper to begin the process of a special use. Legally, nothing for this at this particular time. H1 recommendations and actions would be direct staff accordingly. And then if you have any questions for the developer, as mentioned, Ben Healy is here. And any questions from me about this particular subject. I'll go back to Matt. This is open deliberation.
Mr. Healy, why are you considered temporary? I mean, why would it not be long term, or what's the thought?
Well, so we do on our PUD with the property to the south of us, we do have a more of a bar location that's kind of penciled in on that PUD there. This area is highly accessible, highly visible, and we're not going to be able to bring any type of infrastructure in the near future. So I thought, I read Facebook Goddard, every day. We don't have anything to do. We don't have any place to go sit down. And so I feel like we can make a use of land, and we can provide a, great service to the community. At the same time, we can probably create a pretty nice seasonal business for ourselves. And to kind of go through here, that barn would be the bar area. Just south of it would be some food trucks. There's an outdoor lawn game area that we've got penciled in to the right. There's fire pits. There's some containers that will kind of serve as kind of just backdrops, almost like a fence, with some covered seating. Everything is outside. There won't be, we don't plan on having people, inside the building, depending on what MABCD determines. If they say, that's not a big deal, then we might, do a little bit there. But that's mainly the ideas for staff. There's I think they wrote in like volleyball. We want to bring in some sand and probably do some spike ball and just games for kids and families. And then to the right, that's all the way to the right, there's a stage area. We can bring in some bands and whatnot, and the rest of it's just pretty much outdoor covered seating. Just a place really for the community to go. There's zillions of people at Genesis, and then just really trying to keep those dollars in Goddard. Again, to answer your question, why not do it permanently? We will, but in a different location. This, I can't speak too much on what we have planned here, but this will be for a different use, is all I can probably say right now. So this will be used commercially is the plan, but not for a bar right on the corner. We can pull that back off the highway, and I think it'd be just fine. So that answer?
Yeah, thank you.
Probably way too much.
No, you're good. Thank you. Thank you.
What's your anticipated season?
My thought would be as soon as possible. So it would be like late spring to October 31st, which is Halloween. We can probably kind of do some different things during different holidays. And my goal is to not open a pumpkin patch, but I do think that it would serve the community pretty well if we brought in trailer loads of pumpkins and had some of that Halloween type festivities. Again, keep the money here in Goddard instead of sending them to Wichita or Andover or to Klossmeyer or whatever. I think we can do a lot right here. Does this thing point?
Yeah.
Do I have to hit something?
The green button on the front, that air green, there you go.
Okay. So yeah, it's anyway. The season would be what we've been thinking until October 31st. It's going to get chilly out anyway after that. It gets a little tougher. So that's the thought. And then if we were to do it again next year, to me it would probably kind of follow the spring baseball seasons as there's activities and there's people congregating and the weather is permitting, just open it as the weather's good and there's things going on. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
You bet. Anything else?
I see you've got entries on the south side next to the 80 by 40 containers.
Up here?
Yeah, next north of the parking between there. Is there some kind of, is a fence? That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, so we'll need to get a liquor license unless we just have like a rolling beer truck. But I think even if we do, this whole area is fenced, and we will do that with multiple different ways. We'll use containers. We'll use huge boulders, which if you see on the property right here across from Kellogg,
Yeah.
if you guys can notice that there's big boulders sitting out there, those are ours that we bring up from our properties in Oklahoma. So we'll do some lining of the property with some boulders. We'll probably use some traditional fence. We'll use some containers just to kind of mix it up. I think they drew in an entry point there, and then I believe that's an entry point to have to. And the architects did that just knowing a little bit more than I do about what MABCD and the state liquor license are typically going to require. If we need to add more, we sure can. But that's where those entrances are drawn in at. All of this, I actually had a bigger thought this would maybe come a little further. The architects brought it in and did the same thing with the parking. If we need to pull all these back, property lines, we can always go to here. If this is just too crowded, and we can do the same thing with the parking, bring it out down here. But right now, we feel like that'll work, and hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it's too busy, and we, got to pull it back. But
What kind of, Mike, you talked about the road would be paved or gravel, or
The entry point would be, but the rest of it would be gravel.
like the parking lot would be a gravel parking lot.
Mhm. So right here, so he's talking about the entry point. We're going to need to widen that a little bit, and we'll probably asphalt or pave that, concrete. So bring that a little wider, and then this here, these trees are already out, and the plan would be to just gravel that, and have a little turn, gravel. I'm told that we might need to pave the handicap spots, which is no problem, whatever's per code. We might have to do that. Other than that, that'll be gravel, and this will pretty well be, we might throw down some turf, that'll be sand, and then the rest will just be outdoor grass. It'll be very country and just open. So. Any other questions?
So I know this is very temporary, but I don't know, lighting wise, is it gonna be?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're looking at two different styles of lights. So you've got the kind of hanging, stringing Edison bulb type lights, which provide a fair amount of light, but in certain places, maybe corners, parking lot. Here's a pretty good example. You guys been to Prairie Pines for the haunted houses or for the Christmas tree stuff? They'll pull your cars in, and if you're at night, they've got a guy with a flashlight, and he's saying, "Come this way," and your headlights pretty much bring you in. And then back by there, let's say their building is here, and you're parking here. They've got lights around here, and you kind of, it might be dim, but you follow the lights, and that's kind of what they do. But we thought that up front, we put some poles with lights, and then obviously a lot of the string hanging lights would allow for a glow at least, so you're not just tripping on something that you can't see on the ground. So it'll be a little bit of both. But I would say, just to be totally upfront, most of it would be the stringing, hanging lights with a few of the, more LED spotlights or floodlights or whatever you want to call them in certain spots.
You mentioned, I apologize, I don't know my liquor licenses very well, but you mentioned obviously kids and younger people being there as well.
Mhm.
Is there, I mean, with the liquor license, is there restrictions on that, or how does that work?
That's a good question, and I honestly don't have I don't have all of the, know everything about it, but if you can imagine Chicken and Pickle, they've obviously got a liquor license, there's kids there all night. There probably is some restrictions or some type of code you have to follow. I got a lot to learn as far as that goes. I just know that it's okay to have alcohol in kids and families. There, whatever restrictions there is from the state, obviously we'll follow those. But to be quite honest, I don't know all of the
Sure.
rules around it. So, but I do know that it's possible and it's legal to do. So. And to kind of go into more of that, I'm not wanting this to be like a downtown club and it's open till 2 a.m. My thought was, and I don't want to put myself in a corner right now before I know too much, but 10, 11, probably not even midnight, but something like that, to, let's just say you've got a football game and that ends at Friday night at 10-ish. Are we going to stay open till 11, maybe a little later? Maybe, but we're not in the business to just keep it up, having a rager all night. Just a place for people to kind of come before and after events, things like that. So just a little bit more information for you. Oh, I don't know if this even matters, but we were planning on like a Thursday through Sunday, so it wouldn't be every day of the week, all day. It would be Thursday through Sunday, and probably during the day sometime open until the evening. So, and weather permitting, I'm sure. If we get some ice in October, we'll just not open the doors at all. So. Looks good to me.
So what does the city need from us besides, what's the phrase you put on here?
Receiving, file, deliberate, or direct staff.
Direct staff accordingly. I love that.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank
You bet.
Yeah, I mean, as mentioned, this is not a formal special use application yet. So if Planning Commission felt favorably about it, you could direct staff, being myself, to go ahead and publish a public notice in the city newspaper to schedule a special use hearing before the Planning Commission, which would be in May. So if you're in favor of that. And that way, but also, I mean, feel free to be candid. If you're like, this is what we want to see, then you would say yes, go ahead and publish the notice. But if you had concerns, feel free to raise the concerns now, or, just at least be open with the developer if you were like, no, you didn't want to see it. So that way he doesn't have to spend the application money and the time and then come back in May and then you're like, no, we actually didn't like it today. You know what I mean? You're like, we didn't like it back in April, we just didn't want to tell you that. Now that you're back here after you spent money, we really don't like it. Like, that he would rather know up front. I think that's fair.
How, would there be a time limit that we would allow for this, or just
Whatever you guys want.
whatever?
Yeah, and that's a good question because we did ask the attorney that because there was all those questions about special uses, conditional uses, variances. Don't they run in perpetuity to land? And the city attorney said, Planning Commission and obviously City Council, because City Council is the one that has to approve the final for a special use. You can put a time restriction on it. It can expire, and that special use would just be no longer available for that land.
But we don't need that today, right? That's a
You can
conversation.
consider that in May, whatever you guys want to do. You have time to deliberate if you wanted to consider that.
Is that part of the application process, that you would state the dates, or?
If you wanted to, that's something good that you can direct them to do. Say, I would like to know the times and how long And then that way, they can set a time, date, what he's seeing. That way, when he comes back with the application, hey, this is what I want to do. Here's a time frame that I want to do. Here's the hours of operation. That way, you guys can feel more comfortable with approving a special use to reflect that requirement.
And then let's say, you know, whatever it is, a year, let's say we get to that, we pass that, it just becomes null and void at that point.
At that point, it becomes null and void. He's got to do the process all over
Then it
again. So
starts over.
usually, it's
Okay.
good to put a buffer in there. You say,
Yeah.
if you feel like it's a good, if it's a good idea, that's the main thing. If you feel that it's a good idea, then approve it with some additional time. So that way, if it was successful and it was doing well, you wouldn't have to feel like he has to come back a second time.
Right.
Ultimately, the main reason he's asking for a special use is because we're waiving a lot of provisions of the subdivision regulations that you would typically see if plating, you know, paving, screening, everything that you would typically see from long-term permanent use. The reason that's being waived in the request for a special use is because at some point this is all going to go away. You know, so that way you're saying, hey, this is all going away anyway. So it wouldn't make sense to require him to do all those that you typically see in the subdivision regulations if it's all going to be flattened in the future, in the next 2 years possibly. So that's just something to be considered. But
I'm in favor.
Same.
I think there may be some hurdles in the ABCD, you know, just guessing with facilities and stuff like that, but maybe with the PUD, you know, temporary use.
well, this one is not in a PUD. This is just general business. But no matter what we rezone it, he's going to have to go through MABCD.
Right.
We can't circumnavigate MABCD. There's no way around that. You have to get stamped architectural and engineering drawings for the inside of the building, for any commercial building, especially if you are having anybody in there, whether or not it's patrons or staff. There's a physical body in that building that's a human. You need to have a certain type of occupancy. You just can't get, there's no way around that. So, and those fees and everything that you have to pay to MABCD directly, it doesn't come through the city. You pay MABCD directly, and then you go through that process with Gary Cox and everybody else that you're probably familiar with from the construction side of things. I know he mentioned the, you know, I have kids, and so I go to Klossmeyer Pumpkin Patch, but I kind of consider it that way, except maybe more of an adult version, but maybe I still would bring my kids here. But it's the whole idea of like, you have a seasonal use, and when the sun goes down, you know, you may stay a little bit longer, but you know, for the most part, you're not going to be outside when it's 20 degrees. So there's no long-term use here. It's a seasonal use. And that's covered under Article 6. It's just that there's no bar, you know, there's no bar in Article 6. It's all pumpkin patches and fireworks stands and tree stands and that type of thing. And so this one is unique. And that's why I said it was unique in the beginning, because of that use. It's something that hopefully will do well in the interim before long-term, you know, permanent commercial construction begins, but you don't know. So he's taking a risk.
I think it's an idea we should consider for sure, but I do think we need to limit it to a time, you know, a length.
I concur with that, but I think you're just gonna have to say, in my mind, just today, without knowing anymore, I think you have problems with 2 years, just because
Right.
with the bureaucracy, I'm
Right.
not sure this year's gonna work out as good as we hoped.
Potentially, and then like with the option for a third, maybe because of that.
Right. Yeah.
So like,
I mean,
we give them 2 full years of that.
Just so they don't have to go through, turn right around and go through the process again.
Right. I agree.
The other part of me says though, if it works well, there's nothing wrong with it. I guess we can always look at that the next time too.
We just made it a commercial zone,
Yeah.
C2 zones, and we really definitely want to bring you know, businesses into town, businesses in Goddard for the space we've got. And I think in the interim, I think this is a good use.
Yep, agreed.
I agree.
Do we have a motion?
Do we need a formal levy?
I don't know.
You could make a formal motion if you feel strongly about it.
Or do we need to direct staff?
If you're in favor of a public notice, then I would go publish the public notice.
Yep, I believe we're all in favor.
Okay.
of
Then we'll get the public notice scheduled for this Thursday, and then you would be considering the formal special use application in May.
Perfect.
Okay, very good. You guys are welcome to stay if you want for the rest of the night, or if not,
That's it for me.
that's it for you guys. What's the most day? I
I
mean,
want to talk to Mr. King out right here.
yeah, this is very fortuitous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is item H.2. This is a preliminary plat for 167th West Edition.
Oh, good. Well, please come. Then.
So, the engineering firm Bachman Company has submitted a plat application on behalf of Paul Kelsey of Kicking Development for a tract of land generally located on the west side of 167th West and south of US 54. The land is around 60.57 plus minus acres and is anticipated to be divided into 155 residential lots. The northern lots will be two-family twin homes, and the southern lots will be single-family detached, with the southernmost lots being smaller patio home lots. This land was approved for rezoning on December 12, 2022 for the Planning Commission, finalized with City Council on January 3rd, 2023. The drainage and utility plans have been submitted to the city engineer for review. The Planning Commission is reviewing a preliminary plat for consideration of approval. Zoning is R1 and R4. Acres are 60.57. Gross square footage was 2.6 million. Lots are 155. Time out.
I apologize, man. I apologize. Sorry, I need my concentration. I apologize, sir.
This is me time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Gross square footage is 2.6 million. Lots are 155. Location is 167 US 54. Developer is Paul Kelsey. Engineering firm is Bachman. Housing is twin home, owner occupied, patio, shotgun, single family detached. So this is the plat. It's actually on two PDFs. You see that in your agenda packet. I split them and put them together so that we can kind of see the full picture. Thank you, Thomas. These lots over here are for the twin home. There's 8 of them. These ones over here are your traditional single family detached. These ones down here are the patio homes. All of this is owner occupied. This pond is in existence right now. This is proposed pond. There's a proposed pond over here. I believe a proposed pond over here. In fact, I think here it is. So this is an existing pond. This is proposed, 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 and proposed to offset long-term retention as is required by our engineering standards. We have 3 access points, one here, and one here.
So nothing on it, it's 23rd, right?
No, this is the
Oh, no,
trail
this is
right
up
here.
by,
23rd would be,
That's
you
right,
see
that's
my
right.
pointer, go
That's
down,
right.
down, and all the way down here. So there is land here, and then there's a gap. This is not in the city limits down here, and then 23rd and 167 is further down.
that's right, sorry.
Yeah, that'll be a separate plat in the future. Financially and non-legally, it's approved as a form. It is recommended the Planning Commission approve the preliminary plat for 167th West Edition. You will be seeing the final plat either in May or possibly June, depending on when they can get the final plat before you. But this is for just preliminary. We do have Thomas Joyce of Bachman representing the developer. So if you do have any questions from either me or him, he is available.
So, where the 2 ponds are, retaining ponds, and then it goes to the creek there that runs across, I believe there was some concern by the homeowners over there about flooding.
Yes.
Do you think we've got that adequately addressed?
You want to discuss that?
Yes. If I recall correctly, I wasn't at the meeting, but the previous owner said he floods today.
I believe so. I believe that was what we're talking about. They, when Walmart came in and changed the drainage to that area, and they were saying that they got flooding.
Yeah.
So, and they were concerned because they have cattle, and they were afraid that they'd either get too much water or not enough water. They covered both
There's
bases.
never having me covered both bases. That's how it goes.
So I just want to get it on record.
Yes, that is something we are looking at. So that pond does exist today. We may need to reshape it a little bit to provide for adequate detention. But at the end of development, there's not going to be any more water leaving that point there than what exists today. And so, yeah, that's our intent. We have been working with KDOT so they've got an easement right now over that second pond that exists. It's a little bit smaller. We've been working with them to kind of reshape that one a little bit. You know, can we do kind of one nice big one, or you know, do they want to keep it two separate? But yeah, definitely something we are looking at right now. And he was saying when Walmart came in, with how that all the topography lays, Walmart's a separate drainage basin than where he's at. So just with how water flows, I would be surprised.
Thank you.
Do we have any idea what price points of the patio homes would be?
No, I don't.
I'm not sure what patio homes sell for nowadays.
Too much.
Probably over 200, I would guess.
Probably.
220 maybe.
I believe we're looking at doing 2-story patio homes there.
Which I think is what we talked about
Mm-hmm.
when they first came. Yeah.
For the rezoning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they leaving the tree lines up on the trail, or are they gonna clear those out and have to fence it, or?
I would imagine they'd leave the tree row.
Yeah, we want to leave those trees up as much as possible.
Okay.
We may need to take out some, do it, get utilities back in there. We're gonna have an easement running along there, and to achieve whatever grading we need to get the water to flow into those detention ponds. But as much as we can, we won't leave the trees.
Okay.
Do we have any idea, Thomas, on phasing?
No.
This rear easy, is it this start line? And then this dotted line would be the easement.
South of the trail.
Yes. How wide is the trail property? Like, are
How wide is it?
Yeah. How
I
much
believe
of
the
that?
right of way is 100 feet.
So 50 on either side, basically.
Oh, the center line, yeah, of the trail.
Yeah.
So you're gonna need something like, if they tear out all the trees, you can put them back.
Yeah.
Is that, I know the goal is to keep the trees, but if all the trees came down, do we have any way to make them put them back?
You can only really remove trees that are on your property.
True. I just don't know how that,
If they remove trees that are not on their property, Prairie Sunset Travelers would, I don't know, possibly move into litigation.
I'm not suggesting that, I just don't know where the line, I mean, the trees are the trees, they've been there for a while.
Yeah,
And are they on the Sunset side, or do they fall more on the,
I don't know. There's a lot of trees over there.
Right.
We would have to, each individual tree, if it was going to have to be removed, they would have to mark that tree. And I'm not sure how many, I'm sure they're going to have to remove at least some trees. I just don't know how many they're going to have to remove.
right, do you get what I'm asking though? I mean, if there's a section where all the trees fall on the property and they need to remove them for building, do we have any
Recourse?
way to put something back as screening for the trail, or?
I don't think we have anything in place for that.
Okay, I was just curious.
I can't
Like I
think-
said, I don't know what's gonna happen, I was just curious.
I can't think of anything that we would I mean, we could ask that of the developer to replace trees, but there's nothing in our provisions that would say he has to.
Okay.
Especially if they're technically his trees.
The sanitary sewer maybe run along that. Is that what you're seeing too?
The sanitary sewer typically runs in the back of properties, so yes. The only ones that I think the sanitary sewer is gonna have to run in the front of these ones.
And the patio homes.
Oh, the patio
according to
homes?
our latest concept.
So the patio homes are gonna have sewer in the front,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not gonna have sewer in the back?
So that helps that too.
No, I don't believe so.
Well, that will help a lot.
Like the Bear Burger
Okay.
south.
If
I was
there's
just
is there
curious
no water
because-
in the back either? Water's typically in the front, I just didn't
Yeah,
know.
water table in the front, yeah.
So water and sewer is in the front for this patio home on the north side here?
Yep.
It's in your attachment too.
Yeah, it's pretty huge.
It looks just like utilities in the back.
Yeah,
Once
so
pretty
water.
warm.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's huge. So it doesn't really seem like they would have a reason to remove it. The only thing I would think of would be Kansas Gas or now Evergy. So if Kansas Gas or Evergy would move them, but there's no utility easement back there, I don't think.
I believe there is.
Yeah, there is.
Is there a utility easement?
Yeah.
There looks to be.
The Kansas Gas or Evergy could remove trees. And if that's the
It was
case-
just a question, because I would think both the residents as well as those that enjoy the Sunset Trail would appreciate the trees, but.
Sure.
Yeah, it just says utility easement back there.
It's fairly large.
I mean, I guess if we have a utility easement in the front, we could technically ask the developer just to have the utility easement in the front and not have a utility easement in the back. That forces Kansas Gas and Evergy to go in the only utility easement available, which would be the one in the front, thus preserving the trees from possible demolition. But
Now,
I don't
along
know
the
that
north
it needs
of
to
the
be that
trail, there is an
exactly.
existing 20-foot utility easement today to the
Yes.
city. But yeah, so along the south side of the trail, yeah, we wouldn't be running any sanitary or water. But yeah, it would just be
Drainage
Kansas Gas.
and utilities is what it says.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't trying to make a big deal, I was just curious what.
it's going to be impossible for the trees for no trees to be
Right.
removed.
Oh, absolutely.
There's definitely going to be some trees.
They're just fairly mature, and again, it makes a nice path. And
I know.
creates the-
100%.
the
Trees are definitely an
segregation.
amenity for sure. It's just difficult when we talk about privately owned trees. I mean, once somebody buys the land, it's technically
Absolutely.
it's their tree. You know, it'll be a little bit different. But we've been looking at a tree replacement policy. You remove a certain amount of trees, you have to dedicate a certain amount of funds to our tree planting initiative, but we don't have that right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
So, that's all.
For a motion, are we good?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary plat, 167th West Edition.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
anybody opposed? All right, unanimous. Very good. Thomas, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the night, or if not, have a good night.
Got to travel with black eye check on.
Yeah, you're gonna check out. This is item H.3. I don't see the property owners here, but we'll just be discussing this anyway. This is for boat and RV storage. This is item H.3. So, quick background: the property owners of lots 15, 14, 13, and Block 1 of Casado Martin's First Edition wants to use the 3 adjoining lots for outdoor boat and RV storage. Properties are currently zoned as C2 General Business District, which allows for boats and RV storage. C2 states as a use limitation the following: all businesses servicing storage and display of goods except for the operation of car washes, the sale of self-service gasoline, and operation of automobile service station and truck stops shall be conducted within completely enclosed structures or screened from public view unless approved as a conditional use by the Board of Zoning Appeals or as part of an application for a special or conditional use. They're not asking for anything special on this. They just want to know if you guys are okay with their screening proposal. So the property owners want to put up a chain link fence with slats to screen the lots off as part of the requirement for screening. So since they don't have a building yet, and they're vacant lots, they want to screen the lots for boat and RV storage, which is acceptable as long as you're okay with what they're proposing for screening. There really are no screening potential requirements in terms of commercial for aesthetic purposes, though it does mention aesthetic purposes in the subdivision regulations, but it doesn't prohibit it in terms of saying, it doesn't say you can't use chain link, for example. That's only really a residential restriction for screening. These lots do not have a building, and as such will be an open land use. The subdivision regulations require a principal building before an accessory use is erected, but there are no provisions for a building to exist for a tract of land to be used for business. And so it's kind of an interesting situation. Typically, you would see a business, they build a building and they have boats and RV storage on the inside or on the outside. And actually, we saw this as a conditional use in the county where residents had boat and RV storage in their backyard. I think if you remember that, it was a county requirement that they screen it and have a certain amount of screening. A certain amount of it had to be gravelled, but it was a residential use, and all the boat and RV storage was out in the county. It was outside. It wasn't in a building. We have a similar allowance for that. If you don't have a building and it's for boat and RV storage, you can have it outside, but you have to have it screened, and that's what it's saying here. So the Planning Commission is reviewing the proposed use of commercial land for boat and RV storage to determine if they have any concerns or questions prior to the property owners erecting a fence for the business. And so, as mentioned, it's an acceptable use, boat and RV storage in the commercial district. They just want to make sure that, one, that you're acceptable of what they're proposing for the screening, and did you have any concerns or questions about it, and they wanted to make sure they covered all their bases. And so it's always good to come before Planning Commission first, prior to getting started. And so Article 4.105A, permitted uses, boat and RV storage. So there's no violation of the zoning for land use in that area. Article 4.105F, use limitations, as mentioned. All businesses have to be screened unless it's a conditional use. They're not asking for a conditional use to waive that provision. They are going to screen it. They just want to make sure you guys are okay with it. Article 2.102 for a fence, a freestanding structure or customary material such as metal, masonry, glass, plastic, wood, or any combination thereof, resting on or partially buried in the ground, etc. Fences constructed of metal roofing, so it says, in such manner as to produce an aesthetically pleasing appearance. Fences constructed of metal roofing materials formed with pallets, chicken wires, portions of vehicles or appliances, and the like are not permitted inside of a residential area. So, for confinement screening for partition purposes, threat to public safety, health, and design for construction in such manner as to produce aesthetically pleasing appearance. Screening, fencing, or evergreen vegetation maintaining for the purpose of concealing from view the area behind such fence or evergreen vegetation. When fencing is used for screening, it shall not be less than 6 feet nor more than 8 feet in height unless otherwise provided. They wanted to do 6 foot, so they meet that minimum Article 2.102 screening requirement. Article 3.103F3, permitted obstructions in required yards, so fences in a front yard on lots of single or two-family dwellings, and all types of manufactured and mobile home fences not exceeding 4 feet in height, which are constructed with at least 75% of them. Have no chain link fences are permitted unless approved as conditional use in all other circumstances, including decorative walls, perimeter boundaries, entryways, subdivision, etc. This is saying you can't have chain link inside of a residential area on lots of single or two-family dwellings. But it doesn't mention here for fencing that you can't have metal roofing materials, forklift pallets, chicken wire, portions of vehicles, that type are not allowed. And it's supposed to have an aesthetically pleasing appearance. So obviously that's subjective, aesthetically pleasing. This is what they're proposing. Chain link with slats to screen off the area. This doesn't exist now. This is just taken from Google. Here's the properties. So they inherited these three. They want to screen the whole thing. This is boat and RV storage currently. This is all zoned commercial, general business. So they're abutting another boat and RV storage over here.
That corner was the veterinary clinic?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what happened with that.
No, that's fine. I just trying to remember the...
You're right, though. Veterinary clinic was proposing going over here. As you can see, this neighbor is currently doing boat and RV storage, which is acceptable. But obviously, they already have a building, but they've also screened it off. That was a requirement to be screened off.
So it would be all of the exterior blues that...
These three. They may not proceed with that, but they came into my office saying they inherited these three lots, and that they wanted to know if this was acceptable. It is an acceptable use. I just said that if you are going to be doing boat and RV storage, you have to screen it. Obviously, they're going to have to be gravel or something of that nature over here, and these entrances are going to have to be asphalt or concrete. They don't need to use all three. They can use this one and this one if they want to, not use this one. There's no requirement that they use all three, but these would have to be concrete or asphalt. As you have paving, and approach has to be paved also. This part over here could be all gravel, but they want to see if they can do fencing for that type of use.
You said they want to do 6 foot fence?
They have to do 6 foot, yeah, as a minimum, but they do want to do 6 foot. They could go higher to 8 if they wanted to.
They could go up to 8.
excuse me.
Also, the back side, the bottom side of that, there's businesses.
That's all business, it's all commercial over there.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm just thrilled they're gonna do something. I mean, instead of just chain link, but
Yeah.
I mean,
So the action we need to take is.
This is deliberate, receive, and file.
Okay.
And then at this point, I mean, if you had any concerns, we would have to pass it on to the property owners and say, this is what they saw. But really, we can't really prohibit them from building boat and RV storage because it's an acceptable use. They kind of by right are allowed to build it. But if you had a concern about the aesthetically pleasing aspect of it, that's kind of where that comes up. Where it mentions aesthetically pleasing as a requirement here, basically a fence requirement. A manner as to produce an aesthetically pleasing appearance. That's kind of difficult. So this one right now, I believe this is all picket. I think cedar picket or pine picket. So, but if they want to do chain link, technically there's nothing that prohibits chain link in a commercial district. It's only prohibited in a residential district. And so if they did chain link with these slats on it, does that improve the appearance enough? It's kind of a difficult situation, that kind of, but then again, maybe it's not really that much of a difficult situation. Chain link is not necessarily prohibited. It doesn't necessarily detrimentally affect that area because it's a commercial area anyway. Right? It's just whatever you guys think. If you had concerns about that.
It's good with me.
Would it be possible to ask them to, I mean, with the residential side just across the street, maybe that side of it be a picket? The north side of it?
We could ask that of them. Like I said, technically,
It's really not,
it's not a requirement,
not a requirement.
but
yeah, I mean, it would be nice if they'd match the one next to it, but I understand.
I could convey that to them. I don't necessarily know if I can enforce it, but I
No,
can convey it.
If we're looking at aesthetics, you know, more for residential areas. And, I mean, commercial area chain link fences, I think it's acceptable with the screening in it, with the slats inside the chain link.
I know you have like 3 different color options in these slats. Did they talk about a color? I mean, white's in the picture, but did they
I don't know if
say
I don't know
anything
that-
about doing black fence with black slats? Or
No, I never mentioned it.
Okay.
Yeah, I could
I
definitely.
mean, we're
ask.
just talking appearance, so
Yeah, generally.
it's worth asking.
So, I think it's fine. Question I've got is, so it's the letter of the zoning or law or whatever it is, however you want to call it, but to your question is, does it, if we wanted to, and I'm not suggesting we do right now, but if we wanted to change that so that it defined aesthetically appearance better, so that, because I know like we've had properties come in and we've said that the screening's got to be a certain type and the front of facade has to be a certain type and stuff like that. Does it need, is that something that we should consider at a later time, making it more detailed?
Whatever you guys want. And sometimes people like more definition and sometimes they don't. The people with more, developers with more money usually like some definition simply because then whatever engineering firm or architecture firm that they hire, they have more structure with making that choice. But sometimes if a developer has less money, they want to be able to choose the cheapest choice possible to save on cost. But like I said, it's completely up to you guys. Pleasing, aesthetically pleasing, obviously, the reason they put that in there, you know, is to kind of allow more wiggle room, but it can be an issue, obviously, because I don't know, art, beauty, pleasing, it's all in the eye of the beholder. It's very difficult to kind of say, if we make it more rigid, obviously you prohibit certain types of developments if they can't do it. But if you make it too open, obviously you might have something that you may not like down the road. But it's very difficult to really define it. But you're welcome to, obviously, if you wanted to make that more defined, you're certainly welcome to engage in that. We would do the same thing we would always do, which would be publish it, take it to the planning commission, and take it to city council to change that to say, whatever, if you wanted in a commercial district, you must do this type of fencing or something of that nature.
Okay, so concrete or masonry on the street side. Is that okay?
Barbed wire on top.
Hard wire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, if we can get them to make it
Street side.
street side is not,
Nicer.
appealing. Like I said, at least they're offering to put slats in the chain link. I mean, they
Yeah,
can just put the
exactly.
chain link up and go.
Truth.
No, absolutely.
I think I'd probably push back a little bit on chain link because technically it does say it's screening purposes, which means that the purpose of it would be concealing from view, where
Yeah, true.
you can look through a chain link.
True.
Right.
And that's why when they said they want to do chain link, I'm like,
It's not really screening
haven't really screened it, have you?
until you put the slats in.
Until they put the slats in, and so that's why they're saying
Yeah.
maybe we'd want to put slats, which I'm not necessarily opposed to that. It's like I said, it's commercial, but once you put the slats in, you definitely are screening it.
And then that's enforceable, right? I mean, if they get broken, blown out, whatever.
Yeah, we could say you're violating the
Then put
screening
them back on.
requirement. Yeah,
Okay.
But how much can you see through screening? Is there any parameters to the openness of the screen?
I think there actually is. I don't have it up here right now, and I don't know off the top of my head. There might be a limitation. I think the only limitation that I can think of, which I probably shouldn't really specify because I don't remember it off the top of my head, but vegetation. The reason for the screening, because the allowance was also for vegetation. Like you could use vegetation as a type of screening. Behind such fences are evergreen vegetation. And so they're saying you can use vegetation, but obviously vegetation in the winter shrinks, and you all of a sudden you can see. So there has to be a provision. I believe there was a provision in there about using vegetation for screening that it had to allow. Like you have to actually have it be a blocker, a view blocker.
Well, it's evergreen, so
Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
it stays green all year.
That's fair.
But you'll probably be able to see through 50% of it, even if you stagger them. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but I can't speak definitively on that. I'm not sure if there was a maximum or minimum requirement for that. But in this case,
But who's going to measure it?
that's true. And that came up, obviously, with that conditional use permit for boat and RV storage in the county. And that came up, it's like, how much screening is allowed? It's like, okay, well, they're screening. If you drove by, you saw that they were just screening it on the west side of that property, and then the rest of it was evergreen vegetation. And there had to be, like, those evergreens had to be planted close enough together that it provided screening.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, in this case, they're not proposing evergreens or vegetation of that sort, so.
Well, and I'm sure the landscape designers have, some parameters for a species set so far apart. You're eventually going to
Get what you know.
90% screening or something like that. So there's probably a formula to it.
We do have a requirement, well, not a requirement, but it lists certain trees that are local that can be used for screening and landscaping, but in this case, they're not even really going that route. They're going just for the chain link with the slats, and so.
It might have said, but is the screening just on, you have to screen all four sides of?
Yeah, from public view. Yeah, you have to screen it from public view. So they're gonna have to put a fence all the way around, just like this guy did. They put it all the way around, all four sides. Now, obviously, if there's a fence here on this side, they're just meeting that fence, then that's fine. And there's a fence here, so they could just go up here and come around and connect like that. But they want to run the chain link fence along the whole side that way.
They're gonna be right up to the property line on the
Mhm.
north side, is what they
Yeah.
said. Sure.
Unless that changes.
We just have to anticipate it. They
Yeah.
could do that, so.
It's probably the cheapest way to make the most amount of money, I would
Yep.
imagine, because you don't have to necessarily have a building, but you can do exactly what this guy's doing. You put boat and RV storages here, you run a fence, and then you get a charge however much per month to store boats and RVs there. So there's
Yeah.
as little expense as possible, but maximum
Max it
return.
out. Yep.
Yeah, because we're in Kansas, and so there's so much boat and RV storage required. Like everybody's got a boat and RV, and you see that just driving up 167. You see out in the county lots of boats and RVs being stored. Clearly, they don't own 10 of them. It's clearly they're storing it for the neighbors and friends, etc. So that comes up quite a lot. I can relay that you guys would prefer to see more aesthetically pleasing screening on the north side.
Well, just to match the.
Yeah, I mean, if they're willing to match the other one, that'd be great. I'd
Be preferable.
Yeah, preferable.
I'll certainly relay that. Any other comments or thoughts on that?
I usually tell them to keep, I mean, I know you can't, like, keep it level at top. I know you're kind of moving with terrain a little bit, but for the most part, it always looks better when you kind of
Have a
keep things level, and they get like this, they get wonky.
I can
You know,
mention
just-
that
Yeah.
if they don't do it. I'm
mean,
not sure if I change
You know,
it,
it's
but-
pretty flat around here, so it's kind of easy to push enough dirt to where you can, make it fairly level, but it makes it look better in the end. It's
I could
more
absolutely do that.
strange,
I mean, most of these are just kind of comments that we're giving.
Yeah,
them.
yeah, no, that's why I'm saying.
I can't really enforce any of that.
That's right. So level,
Level and aesthetically pleasing, possibly pick it on the north side. If they're able to accommodate that, that would be ideal. They may not even go forward with the boat and RV storage. Like I said, they inherited these 3 properties. This is an idea they threw out there, and they wanted to know
Sure.
if they went in that direction. Is that what is planning commission kind of want to see? But I think that's good. I think I could try to say north side, try to make it look better. Like I said, it's not enforceable, so if they say, yeah, forget it, then I'll be like, okay, well, I tried. So there's no more on H3. That is it. We'll be moving into staff report. This is item I. So, joint workshop update. The governing body has agreed to meet on June 12th at 7 p.m. during the regular planning commission meeting, such that the planning commission can host the city council for a joint workshop. Discussion items will include a special zoning for older lots in Goddard and percentage of duplexes in newer developments. And so, discussion with city council, we discussed this at the last one, and the question was, do they want to have a special meeting outside of regular meeting minutes with planning commission regular meeting or city council regular meeting? And they wanted to try to accommodate with you guys and what you said about you would rather meet during regular planning commission meeting or regular city council meeting. And so I decided to meet with you guys in June during a regular planning commission meeting. And so what that typically looks like, some of you have seen this before, you open the planning commission meeting, and then city council in the middle of the planning commission meeting opens a special meeting during the regular planning commission meeting, and then you guys deliberate. And there's 12 of you in the room. If everybody shows up, there's 12 of you. And then the discussion items would circle around special zoning for older lots in Goddard, which we discussed at the last planning commission meeting for non-conforming lots. Can we do a special overlay to allow for single family on smaller lots? That's just some of the comments that we received from citizens, like allow them to build more single family detached in that area. And the other one is percentage of duplexes in newer developments. We still have developers asking for more duplexes. And so the question is, it's always come up, what is the ratio for new developments of single family to duplex? And so that keeps coming up. We keep having developers ask that. I keep bringing it back to you guys and the city council, and obviously opinions vary. There is really no right or wrong. It's just whatever you guys want to see so that it's easier for the developer to anticipate that when they start doing their budgeting for that development. That's basically it. So that question will be a lively one, a lively discussion, and so I think that'll be good for everyone to meet and discuss those things. If anything else were to come up, if you guys thought of any other ideas, just please let me know. I can put it on for that meeting. So if you really wanted to discuss a particular subject, we can include it in this open discussion. But keeping it to 2 or 3 will at least have concentrated discussion, as opposed to having 10 items where we have to, have 12 people give individual comments on 10 items. Having 2 or 3 is ideal. But if you do have something that you felt like you really wanted to talk about, you really wanted to pick the brains of the city council during that time, that would be a good item. We can include that item on that discussion.
Since this is during the regular planning commission meeting, I'm assuming it'll be in public.
Oh yeah, it'll be public. Absolutely. It'll be a special meeting. It'll be open just like you're doing right now.
Right.
Live streamed, public, everything else. Citizens' comments would be, the citizens can't engage, but there would just be citizens' comments. It would just be deliberation of the city council and planning commission. So if citizens show up to comment on anything, it'd be during citizens' comments. Once citizens' comments are done, there will be no discussion from the public at large. It will just be deliberation, the planning commission and city council on these 2 agenda items. Economic update, May 6th, Co-Fellow Coffee is anticipated to open. So I don't know if that's going to be an official hard open or not, but basically Co-Fellow took over JoJo's across the street. And so now on May 6th, it will officially be Co-Fellow, and they'll be open for business. According to their Facebook, we don't know if that's 100%. Starbucks is anticipated to open by the end of the year, possibly November. That's the last time when I spoke with them, but they are moving incredibly fast. But then again, it is Starbucks, so what do you expect? Rusted Bean is anticipated also to open by the end of the year, so that'll be ideal. So once again, we'll be having multiple coffee shops opening up, which would be good for the city. And the Hampton is anticipated to have a soft opening by the end of this month, the beginning of May. City staff is working with Betty Sheets, who's the general manager for the Hampton, to have during a soft opening to have a walkthrough with planning commission. So if you guys want to walk through the Hampton prior to having its full opening, we can make that happen. So we would like if you guys too go ahead and walk through it. It's 4 stories. It'll be really interesting. They're going to have a bar on the foyer on the bottom level, and then of course there's conference rooms and everything else, and so you'll be able to see it. They have multiple suites, and some of them are relatively nice. I actually walked through them. We have 2 bedrooms and a nice looking layout. So you get to see what that looks like. And soft opening means that it should be fully staffed at that point. So it'd be, if you're willing, and I'll just be working with Betty Sheets on that one. If you guys want to have a walk through that, we can make that happen. You can walk through and see it prior to its full opening at that point. So other than that,
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
okay, we can definitely make that happen. As long as it goes into according to plan. Last time I was there with council member Fish, we were walking through, there was a lot of construction happening. So a lot of the work has shifted from obviously the Genesis and the Splash Park, which is now open, to the Hampton. And they're anticipated to open before the natatorium. So they're gonna, like I said, hopefully by the end of this month, beginning of May. If not, then we'll let you know, we'll keep you up to date, and we'll see if we can schedule you guys to get a walkthrough of the Hampton before it's finally open. At that point, we'll move on to item J, planning commissioner comments.
No comments.
Looks like we're out of words tonight.
Is that possible?
Nothing? All right. Next regular planning commission meeting would be May 8th, 2023 at 7 p.m. So, Mr. Vice Chair, if you want, you can call for adjournment.
We got a motion?
All motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Very good.